of the Accessibility Committee with the Athens City Commission on Disabilities. And we are going to call to order our November meeting. It is November 12th at noon, at 12:05 actually. So thanks everyone for joining us. We have kind of a small agenda, but they're big topics. First of all, it's, just kind of finalizing our plans for the feedback on State Street and Washington Street as it's intersecting Court Street, and we're kind of rolling that all together into general recommendations for any kind of streetscaping projects. And then secondly, just kind of brainstorming and thinking about what we want to accomplish as an accessibility committee, but also as a full commission over this upcoming year. So let's go get started.
So I had also sent out a summary sheet of all the general things. So we can take that off of our spreadsheet for the detailed ones. Yeah,
and I was wondering if Diane, or would it be good if I pulled that up?
If you want, it seems to me we need to do two things. One is to finalize the detailed suggestions, and then probably just review the general ones to make sure it encompasses everything. So either way.
I guess what may be good is if we look at the general recommendations first, and then we go back at the details, and that way we can fill in if we see anything on the details that we're missing. How does that sound?
Yeah, or remove those things from the other sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, we should start with removing it from the other sheet, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the general one?
Yeah. Is it a new sheet on that page, or is it a separate document?
I think I sent it as like a in an email attachment.
I can pull that up. It'll just take me just a second here to pull up that. No. Let's see here. Pedestrian crossing.
I'm not seeing it. I know it seems like I saw the email, Diane, but I'm not seeing it now somehow.
Looks like I did it on October 16th. And it's called Overarching Comments for Project. Here, I can forward it to everyone.
Yeah, or you can post a link to it in the chat if you wanted to.
No, it's just a Word doc.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I see.
Oh, I don't know if I ended up transferring it to Google Docs. Let me check. I might have done that.
Yeah, I think it is a Google Doc.
Okay, I might have done that. I don't always remember what I do.
So much going on. It's hard to keep track of all.
I usually start in Word because it's just easier for me.
So I went ahead and just shared it.
Okay, that's fine.
And that way we can all just kind of see the document.
Cool.
So on behalf of the Athens general recommendations and considerations for future projects, overarching recommendations for accessibility, crosswalks should be level and have different texture than the street, such as stamped brick concrete between the parallel white lines used to visually delineate the crosswalks. So yeah, I remember reading this a couple of times and just being really impressed with it as like general recommendations. And it's interesting because I'm working with a contractor to make an ADA accessible ramp on a home in Athens. And, he looked up online, like how to make an ADA accessible ramp. And there's just all these things, but he looked at the actual guideline and it was just so different from what actually like gets made around town and stuff. So he was really like, I need to follow the actual ADA, not like what other people are doing.
Right.
So crosswalks should meet ADA requirements, which no look between street and curb cut. And that's, again, like a major barrier between what happens. Truncated domes towards the next curb and crosswalk. Curb cuts that are currently too steep and inaccessible by raising street level. All sidewalks be concrete instead of bricks, just like having those differences end up creating large problems later on. Storm drainage. Intersections, we like to advocate for installing talking signals for crossing the street, LPI, at traffic light intersections so that people can get extra lag time to get across. And at highly trafficked intersections, allow the ability to press a button to enable extended crossing times. Is there a name for that? Do you know, is there a name for that, Rob or Diane or Tiffany?
The LPI?
No, at the one right below LPI at highly trafficked intersections.
I know of a name for that. Rob, do you know?
There might be some kind of official term for it. Yeah, let me try looking that up. Let me look and I'll let you know if I find something here.
Okay, I'll go down to sidewalks. When driveways extend over pedestrian sidewalks, the sidewalk's cross slope should be level. So even though there's a slope on either side, that the sidewalk itself stays level. Sidewalk furniture planted should be added to the streetscape design, but not obstruct sidewalks, walkways, or entrances. These should be on the road sign and not placed beside accessible parking spots or routes. Protruding objects. Objects should not be more than 4 inches from a wall without cane detectable objects underneath. Natural markers should be used when possible. When the city approves projects such as art projects, consider whether project creates protruding objects. Accessible parking. Curb heights at accessible parking spaces should be 4 inches or less to allow vehicle access. Again, no planters or benches next to it. Parking meters should be within ADA guidelines. Some are too high currently. Where pathways are wide enough, we recommend that accessible parking spaces have an indented area that goes into the sidewalk so that stripes can be put on the left of the vehicle for those who exit their vehicle on the driver's side. Yeah, I think that's clear enough. Educate contractors that accessible parking spaces must meet ADA accessible guidelines. Right now, they're too often too narrow. And we recommend more accessible parking spaces near services that provide healthcare, elderly or disability services. Building entrances, provide a ramp or two-tiered sidewalk to enable access. Ask businesses that do not have a push-button door opener to post a sign about how to gain entrance. Bike and scooter parking. Often bikes and scooters are left in the sidewalk, on ramps or in the pathways. We recommend designated parking for those types of vehicles. And I think having designated scooter and bike parking would really help them not be scattered about as much. In general, under accountability, in general, when improvements or renovations are made, the city should indicate that all projects must meet ADA and designated accessibility requirements. Contracts within the city, with the city, need to specify that contractors will be held accountable to make reparations if specifications are not met.
And I thought of one other thing, Davey, based on your email this morning that talked about the height of the push button for the crosswalks.
Yes.
We include that under crosswalks?
Let's include that under crosswalks. Do you want me to type that in?
Sure, because you have access right now.
Okay. Let's make sure I do. Let's see. Yep. And there is a button. I guess door access or to cross the street, the push button should be made ADA accessible. Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into that, but yeah, it was crossing Union Street at the bike path. The button to ask, for the flashing lights was in a place where a person on a low bicycle or a person using a wheelchair couldn't reach out to push the button.
Mm-hmm. It's a common problem and it's common sense, right? But that doesn't work with contractors sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Davey, I'll look up the ADA guidelines if there's any and try to clarify that for this if we need to.
I'll just put there should be no impediments near the button.
Right. No impediments to reach the button.
Yes. Okay. So now we can go back and look.
So I added something in the chat here about the extended button press or extended push button. I think extended push button maybe is the term to use for that feature.
Okay, and that's what we were talking about.
So that was to extend the time to get across the street.
Okay.
Instead of, we don't really want push buttons that trigger the signal because the signal should be automatic. That should be one. I don't know if we say that explicitly, but I think that's something we should say is that push buttons shouldn't be there unless they are to add additional features for accessibility. So signals should be automatic. Pedestrians should be included in the plan already.
Okay.
But if we need extended time to cross, or the other thing you can have those buttons trigger is other accessibility features like audible signals or speech or increase in crossing time.
Okay.
So that concept is a really good concept, I think, that the city should be thinking about.
Okay.
Because one thing is, keep in mind, if they were to do audible signals, say at the four-way crosswalk at Union and Court, people working nearby probably wouldn't be real happy about the continued noise, I guess you could say, that the signals would produce if they were just set up to always go. But having a button signal, a button press to activate that assistance, I think makes more sense. I don't know what you guys think about that detail, but I think in general that it's like an accessibility feature button. Here it's called an extended push button. But to add features to the signal would be something I think the city should be thinking about doing.
So that's something that we can include up here where it says install talking signals for crossing the street, especially near major intersections.
Mm-hmm.
As an optional button for how do people feel about that? Saying it makes sense. Do you think it makes sense, Noah? What do you think, Diane?
Install talking signals for crossing the street, especially near major, as an optional button or with an optional button for extended.
optional button to activate it.
Yes.
Well, I think, oh, I see, to activate the talking button. Is that how they're designed to do that?
They can be.
The talking element or feature?
Yeah, I've seen them both ways. But I think you're right in terms of like noise and that kind of thing. I think that would be like a way to not have it going all the time, but rather just when it's needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it could be just during certain hours that it's automatic, or it could be, yeah.
This is Carolyn. When you say automatic, so the person's voice would activate it? I'm just not clear.
You'd press a button.
Press a button. Okay. So how often, I'm thinking about, this is for people who are blind, right? Or
visually impaired.
Visually impaired. Okay. So knowing that population, how many people we're talking about and how much would it be used, I think we need it, definitely. But as far as it being just a aggravation to somebody, Rob, I'm not sure how often it would be used. So what are you thinking?
So then having it button actuated, I think makes sense.
Okay.
So it would just involve communication to the community that it's available.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes total sense to me. I'm going to stop the share.
How would blind people know there was a button?
Yeah, that's exactly.
I think it would be a good question for JC, is it?
JW.
Yeah.
JW, for JW. See what his take is on that. I'll bet you that he would, because he frequents certain areas regularly, he would quickly get used to it and know it's there. But he would have to be told, though, that it's available even probably. So.
In terms of like Braille on street crossing, is that ever something that happens? So it could just be part of the Braille as to like the street names.
Yeah, I think the button sometimes has Braille above it. I've seen it like that, I believe. So then they can see what there's a button, but what does it do? The Braille could tell them what it's for.
Right.
They do.
The Braille could say press here for voice activated something.
I think this is great. It's something that Dr. Smith's been wanting for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, I think it would be too. And if the pathway is clear of how to cross the street, that would be even better.
Yes.
Yes. The street crosswalks at work. Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's just an excellent synopsis that we can use on multiple further projects. Jessica Aldean, who I think is a city engineer, if I'm correct, did mention that there's another union project happening in 2022.
Yeah, that's between Schaefer Street and the bridge crossing the river. So it's like is that a mile and a half or so maybe of road? It's a pretty substantial piece. And it's practically a highway right now. Right. So it would be better redesigned for other users. And there is a design that's been out, initial design that was reviewed, and I've seen that there was a second design now. It wasn't sent out to the public yet, I don't think. But they're including a roundabout at Schaefer, a small roundabout, but one that would fit in there, surprisingly. And a multi-use path along the south side, I think, yeah. The side with the hospital. would be a multi-use path along the entire length of that, at least to the bikeway. Maybe that would extend to the bridge. I'm not sure about that, extending to the bridge part, but at least it would go from the bikeway all the way to Schaefer Street. And then how it connects to the roundabout exactly is something that they were debating on still. But it would be good maybe to look at that plan, maybe at our next meeting, and see if we can get the city to have somebody show up and talk to us about it. By the way, with that being said, I don't know if you've heard the news that Bob Hetty has left the city. He's no longer employed by the city. I don't know any of the circumstances except that happened at the end of September. And then since then, Jessica has been acting as the chief engineer, which is great news because she's been very responsive and very helpful. I think she has a good perspective. She's been one working with the community groups. So she knows our issues, and it's good that I think she stepped up into that role. It doesn't mean she's going to be the permanent selection for that position, though. She's been the deputy recently. I think she became deputy in the last year or two. But
Diane, could you put it on? Are you taking notes, or is anyone taking notes for today's meeting?
It's this time.
Okay.
I can take notes. Hold on a second.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just I can invite Jessica to our next meeting.
Okay.
And that's another thing I wanted to discuss really quick. Do we want to have a December accessibility committee meeting, or should we just wait until January? I think most committees are waiting until January and taking December off, but it's up to the group.
Either way, I'm okay.
Okay.
Are we going to go through the detailed part of the spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet, to finalize that? Because then if we finish that, we can send both to the city before they send out. I don't know what their timeline is for sending out RFPs for that project.
Okay.
But we probably need to get it done.
Here we go. Walk and roll audit. Okay. So I will go ahead and share my screen again now that I have it brought up. And I will go all the way over to the first spreadsheet. So this is kind of getting down into, the nitty gritty of what we're talking about.
I'm fine with meeting in December.
You're fine with meeting in December, Noah? I am too. I'd like to have at least a short meeting. And the time we have it reserved and everything, so it should be fine.
Yeah, I'd be fine with meeting. It's the week before the break, I think, right? A week before.
So yeah, here's some photos. And Rob and Diane, thanks for getting all these pictures together and all the notes together. And anyone else who helped with this? Yeah, I think we just really did a great job, not to toot our own horn here, about being very specific and doing a thorough job on this project. So, we made specific recommendations around certain businesses or certain intersections. But we also made some general stuff.
Yeah, we can take out the general stuff since I took it and sort of reorganized it for that letter that we put together.
Yeah, I think the overall comments can come out. We just maybe want to make sure. How did you just copy and paste those and then sort of edit them, Diane?
And then reorganized and sort of reworded some stuff.
Yeah, let me just take those out then. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to keep the one about PassionWorks right here, but get rid of the rest.
Okay.
Which one? I don't see it, but
this one, because I think have creatability for people to have easy drop-off pickup spaces where it makes sense.
Right.
Makes sense, such as in front of PassionWorks. Oh, yeah, we could leave that.
We could
I guess. Or maybe it could be also mentioned in the overarching.
Wait, I thought I had that in the general one. No, maybe I.
You do, I think you do, but this is just like specific, like one specific thing where it would really make a lot of sense based on our.
Let's leave it, sure.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can double check that it's in the other one too.
And these are some, even though these are some general comments down here, a lot of these are really specific, like over on College Street, there's no sidewalk. The sidewalk kind of ends right there. Domino's legal aid parking lot, there should be one ADA accessible spot, but there is none. This one we could get rid of.
That's a fairly general comment, yeah.
Yeah. And then overarching comments for projects. I think these we have all, we can get rid of all of these.
Mm-hmm.
And then going over to the west side. We can go and get rid of this because we already covered that with LPI. Yeah, we talked here about some adequate bike parking and some bike walking areas.
Some in the general is specific, so you have to just be careful.
Right.
Yeah, we were working so fast, I had a hard time making notes in the spaces.
Yeah. And I think all these were moved up. Let me just make sure that we have so yeah, we have some stuff that should be on the other side. Well, okay, let me think here. So this is about artifacts and CASA's entrances. So we talked about having ramps for that. But then we also have some notes about Silvaki's and Tony's over here.
That was to have the double entranceways.
Right.
Yeah, the tiered sidewalk kind of thing. That's when that came through.
So this would be, which section would this be? This would be West State Street on the south side. Okay, Tony's can make accessible, add raised level to make business entrances accessible. So we actually already have that included over there, so we can get rid of it here.
Okay.
There's not really any building entrances or anything on Washington, the north side, so we didn't make any notes there. So this should be a little bit better. So we could do bi-level grading. Well, we'll say sidewalk, so that Minuteman Press becomes accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And these are actually pretty good spots on that side of the street. And they're pretty good models. The height's good, everything's good on those. Across the street, there were some trees, but we already noted that. Again, the sidewalk being redone is really great. Great. I think that was one of the more well done things that has, some of the projects that have been done. That was really well done.
There was a note about the meter being too high. Is that part of this? Near the parking space.
Check height of meters.
Okay.
I found them to be at an accessible height, but yeah, maybe I missed one.
Okay. So we could probably take out the corner of parking garage piece.
Yeah, good call. The parking and trees are in the way. The meter's too high. Building entrances. The entrance to Chase Bank isn't ADA accessible. Sidewalks, lots of uneven sidewalks. The slopes, the stamped concrete works well, but the transition with the sidewalk should be flush. Curb cut there should be wider.
Did we have any images for this part?
There aren't any in there right now.
Rob, do you know if we have any images for that section?
I was doing the last couple of these we did with myself out there and just the phone. So I didn't take the time to try and take photos. It would have been, I was having trouble as it was, you might recall, with the phone overheating.
Okay.
And, so I didn't take pictures. We could go back out and take some, but it's another task to accomplish. Maybe we should try and finalize this.
Yeah, I think it's better to get it done too.
Okay. I just added the part about getting into the parking garage.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we have one more. This is Washington and State Street. So this one is east and north. Signage on how to get into the church. There's some protruding the railing could be pushed back since they're protruding. The curb cut is way too high. It's like 2 feet high, it says. The curb cut on College Street is a huge mess, needs better slope, domes, etc. Crosswalk, very white crosswalk area. Seats in front of the city building could have markers to not cause a trip hazard. And we talked about all of this already. Okay, I think that completes our walk and roll audit, and we'll have to put that, we actually did this from, I guess we actually did the walk and roll audit back in June. It just took us a while to, I think we had to go back out. Rob went out another couple times, and yeah, we did it.
I guess we could put the date we actually did each of these, but maybe that doesn't matter so much. We could, instead of saying 6/11/20, we could just put June or June, July. I think we were into July for the.
Yeah, I think even August with some of it. So
Might have done one in August. Or we could just say summer 2020.
Do you want me to take this and send it to the city with the initial, like, overall whatever?
yes,
Okay.
I think it's good to have like a detailed view as well as part of the report.
So
Going through and trying to clean up formatting.
who would this go to then? Jessica, it sounds like?
It sounds like a,
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, probably her in the first place, but now especially since she's the interim or acting.
All right. And I can send it to Steve and Paul and people on this committee.
now that Andrew Chicky is the deputy safety service, I forget.
Yeah, I guess it couldn't hurt to CC the service safety director and deputy service safety director, so that the service safety director is acting. Chief Pyle, Police Chief Pyle is acting, and then Andrew Chicky is the deputy.
Andrew who? Sorry.
Chiki, Chiki, I think.
Okay.
It's CHICKI, I believe.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Tiffany.
Yeah.
All right, I'll send both the general and the specifics. And copy everybody.
Great.
And I'm going through and just trying to reformat a little bit and clean it up, like taking off the boundaries. We had some of the cells had boundaries and some didn't. Just they look better, I think, without any. And then I'm wrapping text and things like that to try and clean it up a little too. As we talk, I'll just continue doing that. So.
Do you want me to wait till tomorrow to send stuff so you just have a chance to go through it?
I'll do it. By the end of the meeting, I should have it cleaned up.
Okay, good.
Great. Okay. Well, great. Everyone give yourselves a big pat on the back. That was a giant project that we worked on. And yeah, thanks everyone for support. I know we had a few other people who aren't present with us today who also had a big part. So yeah, awesome job, everyone. Great. I feel great getting this done. And if anything pops into your mind and you think, oh, well, we should have done this or that, we can always attach it, add it on. So feel free to just email Diane with that and we can get it done. Then the next thing I have on the agenda is to talk a little bit about, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. So can I just have, so the members we have right now are Noah, Rob, Diane, Tiffany, and me for the accessibility committee. And it sounds like we are a go for our December meeting then, right?
Right.
Okay. I think that makes sense. And we could ask that Jessica come to that or at least send us the plans so that we can look through them and see if we see anything that can be improved upon. And again, this is to be proactive so that we are able to give feedback and advice early on in the process of, you know, these streetscaping and sidewalkscaping projects. For what we would like to accomplish as a committee and also as a full disability commission as well. Okay, so it is CHIKI for Andrew Chicky's name. What are some things that we'd like to get done in the next year as we're kind of wrapping things up here?
I would guess whatever the next project is that Jessica identifies with us, we would want to work on that as part of what we do.
Yeah, I think in general, continue to review projects is good. Next big one, I think, is the one we just talked about, Union Street.
Yeah. One thing.
I have more. I think they're in the process of applying for a grant for improving sidewalks in the west side.
Wow.
There's going to be some West End sidewalk improvements and pedestrian improvements that we definitely want to weigh in on those as well. When they come up, I'm not sure a timeline on that. That way, it might be good to have that meeting with Jessica to hear an update on those kind of things, what else is coming up, but then also probably to talk about the West Union project in particular. But yeah, so I think those things in general should be on our agenda.
As a new member to this committee, I'm not really sure how you all have decided on topics in the past, but I wondered too, is there any sort of pulse on what the community's needs are in terms of, you know, from various age groups? You know, is there anything that maybe this group should be focusing on that is, you know, kind of needed that hasn't been considered? Like, for example, I don't know, are the parks really accessible? Are there alternatives or, you know, any of those sorts of things that maybe haven't been considered for a little while? I know we talked about the pool, but what are maybe some other things in the community that need to be considered as well?
That's a great question, Tiffany.
Mhm.
I think some of the things that we've heard a lot on in the past year, and I guess the previous year too, is about like managing scooters being left around. I think that's something that we should maybe focus on in terms of getting some designated spaces that are out of the way. And also with bicycles, just like better signage about how to get in places. And these are all things that we're working on for sure. But in terms of parks, one thing that may be good to become more involved in is just thinking of different age groups, is some of the planning with the schools as they get built. Schools are often, big community hubs, especially with like playground equipment. I think it would be possibly advantageous to look over some plans with some of the schools as well. What do people think of that idea?
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea.
I think, Tiffany, too, your idea of just like getting the pulse of community needs. We don't really do we make things available on Facebook to know about us, but we don't really reach out to community to say, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, and this may be something that Noah's working on. I know Noah's been working on some community surveys. Not to put you on the spot too much, Noah, but that's possibly something you could add on to a survey, or I don't know if you already have some data that is included in the
I
survey.
am going through the parks on my other project with the city.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, that's perfect. So Noah, could you maybe just, possibly get some time on the upcoming agenda and kind of share what's going on? That would be helpful, I think.
That was actually on the agenda for the, let's do it. We could do it for December as well. I think that would be really helpful for this committee, but Paul and Noah are on the agenda for the full commission the full disability commission, this upcoming meeting, which is that next week?
Yes.
No, I'm getting an agenda together then.
It is going fast.
It is.
So overall, in terms of goals, because I know for next week's meeting, we need to give our suggestions.
Yeah.
We have continue with reviewing projects, identifying community needs, and I don't know really how to say it.
Yeah, finding ways to get more community input. I think as a subcategory to that, I think it would be great to add 1 or 2 new people to our committee, maybe 2 to 3. Let's say 2 to 3 people.
Okay.
People who have different knowledge or accessibility needs than what we do.
I think we still need to, the other area is really, we have it in our recommendations for this, is looking at accountability. So looking at who actually checks to make sure things are done well. Like that whole piece is pretty mysterious. Like who is the code office? Do they have it really written out and explicit that they would check that things are accountable or that those are accessible?
Yeah, it's that Title 40 stuff. And if it's lower than that, then people don't check.
Right. So maybe identifying ways to, I don't know, it just feels like we need that in our system, in our city system.
Yeah, and it might be making sure that the engineers, when they're reviewing the project, there's like a final punch list, they call it. And that punch list is things they're supposed to review to make sure that everything was delivered and done right on the contract. That should include accessibility requirements for review. The problem is often they don't really know if they're looking at something, if it really is compliant or not, if it's done right or not. And that's where they maybe need some education. But having it on the punch list would be a start if it's not already on there.
Okay. So maybe our two things could be around working with the city to identify on systemic needs. One, identify ways to respond to inaccessible things. I don't know.
Yeah, I think embedding into city processes an accessibility punch list.
Right.
And I think we could use what we came up with this project that we did.
Right.
And just including that on that punch list for the city engineers to look at. What do people think of that?
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, we could say in the cover email, I could say to provide it to city engineers or provide to contractors for final.
I think we could even make the list better by that time. But maybe we could talk with Jessica about it at the next meeting. But just having like an embedded process in the system is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
A final punch list into construction projects.
So something along this line is there's also these sort of side projects that happen that aren't official city projects. There's a good example of one, the Bailey's Trails. So the city has contributed to the Bailey's Trail, and they've made a commitment to assuming the county also makes the same commitment. There'll be a commitment to the city spending $90,000 a year towards the trail system. So it makes sense for that system, since we're a city commission and the city should be trying to make sure where they spend money, there's accessibility issue, or at least accessibility is considered as part of the project and maybe done right.
Right.
And you guys weighed in on that and have got some changes made already. So it complicated my life a little bit, let me say.
I wondered how to job you were.
Not to be negative, but
Thanks.
I'll tell you this much. Well, this is maybe a longer discussion. We should talk about that at the end, maybe if we have time. But I think keeping an eye out for other projects that are not directly city projects, but where the city is spending money, like the Baileys, makes sense too.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was such an interesting process to like hear, oh, it's an accessible trail or it's an accessible bridge, and then going out there and being like, no, it's not even close. And then going back with people who work on the project. And I think by the time I got there, the bicycle people, like the trail bicycle people, had already made it like marginally accessible, or at least temporarily accessible. But in the process, had done a couple other things that made it less accessible. So yeah, I think within like the village of Chansey, we were talking about ways to like embed some processes there too about, you know, who's like, who says yes to things and what's the process for that?
Yeah. So the background on that bridge is that the Forest Service was going to put one in.
And remember, we're live on whatever.
This is fine. You can hear this. But the Forest Service was going to put in a bridge, made a determination for one reason or another that they couldn't do that. One, it's not their property. Two, it would have to be done to specifications they couldn't build it to, since it was going to be a temporary bridge. There's a real bridge being built next year.
Right.
So they couldn't do it. So it ended up that, you know, if a bridge appeared, this would be a good thing, really. And so the bike club stepped up and said, okay, and we had a little meeting out there and said, okay, here's how we should design it. And let me say that it wasn't designed exactly the way it had been discussed. So it was supposed to be flat and connect directly to the path on both sides. So it would have been, quote, accessible. That didn't happen when it was actually built. So then fixing it so that is accessible was done with gravel, which seems to be okay now. But again, it's a temporary bridge till ODNR builds one sometime next summer, I think is the timeline on that.
Yeah, it was also really good to go out there and hear about future projects as well, and adding more parking so that, there's, additional, and possibly even making more of the paths more accessible too, which would be cool.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing is just to finish that conversation, since we're doing it, is I'm organizing, you could say I'm the volunteer maintenance coordinator for the project.
All right.
Yeah.
That's me. So it's on my list to try and regrade the gravel trail so that it fixes some of the accessibility issues. One of them is going to be fixed soon by a contractor. That's the culvert that was too narrow is going to be widened. They're going to put a new culvert in, widen the trail there. And then in the process, they're going to dig a couple ditches that help with drainage so we can then regrade the trail a little bit. So there might still be some cross slope issues because in order to make the trail drain properly, you have to have some cross slope. It's making it so that it's not too much is the key. And the modifications we're going to be doing with hand tools. So we'll have to see how well that goes.
Do you know signage?
What about signage?
Well, right now, the main signs, nothing indicates which path is accessible, which usually you would say that.
Here's further background is even though it was mentioned early in the project and even through into construction that they were talking about accessibility access for that trail, the main trail that starts from the trailhead there, the first like half a mile or so that's gravel. Once it was built, the Forest Service changed their tune on that and said, well, not accessible ADA compliant, but it'll be accessible for people with adaptive cycles.
Oh, that's not the same.
Like hand cycles and things. So it is not at all the same. And so they had downplayed that. But then when the bridge went in, you saw that message that they said it's accessible now, accessible. Which it wasn't actually. So somebody made a mistake, and at any rate, it's going to be accessible at some point. It's not yet fully accessible, so it should be improved. I think we'll be able to work on the trail with volunteers to regrade it in the next couple months. And the trails will be open all year round for non-mechanized use, or wheelchairs are obviously fine, but it's normally closed in the winter to bicycles, for example. Okay. But it's open for pedestrians and runners and such all year.
That's good. Well, even a sign to find it, to get off the main road to go to it, there's no sign.
Yeah, and that's because it's a state highway. So the state has to approve installation of the signage. That's in the process. There's a lot of moving pieces with this project and a lot of players. And that's been a complaint for a while, and it's still not happened yet. But I think that's coming before too long here. So. Yeah. And then, the entrance changed. There's 2 ways to get in now. And exactly how it's going to be modified when ODNR does phase 2 of the rebuild of the park is going to start next year. So we'll see what happens with that. I think actually they're going to start some stuff this winter. So, at any rate.
Cool. I might take the kids out after work today and see if we can bike around a little bit. And yeah.
So the trail is still going to there's one gully across it that's been eroding, and that's still not fixed because it needs a ditch. And the contractor that replaces the culvert is going to put a ditch in, and then we have to go in with hand tools to clean that up and regrade and fix everything. So it works. But, so it's in the process. It's going to take a little while.
Yeah, and it's an exciting thing. Like I'm someone who likes to be outside, and I know is too. A lot of people really like to get out, and it's a great addition to Athens County to be able to go to another trail and not have to go all the way up to Hocking. We are at a stopping time. We have maybe like 1 more minute for comments or additions.
I think we're good.
I think we have some pretty clear things. I think one other thing I would really like to do in this upcoming year is to grade out, to use that concrete grader to fix the curb cuts on Union and Court Street. Those are just dangerous, and that's like a main pedestrian intersection. And having that inch lip is like, I get caught on it, I could easily tip out of my wheelchair on that. And it doesn't seem like much, but that's just dangerous. So I'd like to, I'm going to personally work on that, and maybe we can talk with Jessica about that too.
Yeah, I assume she'd be the one to approve a project like that. I know the mayor touted I only heard it from him really, I think, that they were doing that grading on Court Street when they graded those sidewalks.
Yeah.
So I assume it had to have been Bob Hetty that was involved in it previously.
He was.
So, yeah.
That's been really helpful. I think just getting some of those curb cuts that are concrete, they should be able to be graded, would be great. All right. Well, thanks everyone. See everyone next month. And thank you, Diane, for taking notes and getting the report out. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
And I finished those edits, so it looks cleaned up.
Good.
I renamed it to Summer 2020.
I'll take a look through it and send it out in an email.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.